The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Learn to adopt or let go of any habit you desire. You've decided no more cigarettes, or perhaps it's no more unhealthy snacks. For a few weeks, everything goes smoothly. You feel proud of yourself. However, one day, the urge suddenly takes over. And just like that, you find yourself returning to your old habits. Does this ring a bell? If it does, then you are already aware of the strength of habits. Habits are cue, routine, reward cycles that save energy. In the 1990s, a team of MIT researchers studied mice to understand how habits form in the brain. The mice had to find a piece of chocolate at the end of a T-shaped maze. With special equipment, the scientists observed the brain activity of the mice as they sniffed their way around to the chocolate. When the mice first encountered the maze, their brain activity increased significantly. They could smell the chocolate and started looking around for it. However, when the experiment was repeated over and over, the researchers noticed something intriguing. As the mice began to learn the chocolate's location and memorize the path to it, go straight, then turn left, the brain activity in the mice decreased. This process of turning a series of actions into an automatic routine is called chunking, and it is the foundation of habit formation. Its evolutionary purpose is vital. It helps the brain save energy and efficiently perform common tasks. So, even a complex action that initially requires focus and thought, like finding chocolate in a maze for a mouse, or for you backing out of a driveway in your car, eventually it becomes an effortless habit. According to a 2006 Duke University study, about 40% of our daily actions are based on habit. Generally, any habit consists of three parts. First, you notice an external cue. For example, your alarm clock ringing. Your brain activity increases as it determines the suitable habit for the situation. Next is the routine, the activity you are used to doing when faced with this specific cue. So you hear the alarm, and then you get out of bed, go to the bathroom, and brush your teeth, with your brain practically on autopilot. Finally, you receive a reward, a sense of accomplishment, and, in this case, a minty, fresh feeling in your mouth after you brush your teeth. Your brain activity increases again as it recognizes the successful completion of a habitual routine, and this strengthens the connection between the cue and the routine. Habits are incredibly strong. In some instances, people with severe brain damage can still follow their old habits. Take Eugene, a man with major brain damage. When asked, he could not point to the kitchen door from his own living room. But when he got hungry, he would simply stand up and walk straight to the kitchen and go grab a jar of nuts from the cabinet. Eugene could do this because habits are learned and maintained in the basal ganglia, a small brain structure located deep within. Even if the rest of the brain is damaged, the basal ganglia can still function normally. Unfortunately, this strength means that if you break a bad habit like smoking, there is always the risk of a relapse. Our habits are strong and unconscious. Habits persist because they create cravings. Picture this. Every afternoon for the past year, you have bought and enjoyed a tasty, sugar-filled chocolate chip cookie from your workplace cafeteria. You consider it a well-deserved treat for a hard day's work. Sadly, a few friends have pointed out that you have started gaining weight. So, you decide to break this habit. Now, how do you think you are going to feel that first afternoon, walking past the cafeteria without that delicious chocolate chip cookie? Chances are you will either just eat one more cookie, or you'll walk by feeling a little grumpy, a little sad. Breaking a habit is difficult because you develop a craving for the reward you get when you complete a habit loop. Research from the 1990s by neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz demonstrates how this works in the brain. Schultz studied the brain activity of a monkey named Julio, who was learning various tasks. In one experiment, Julio sat in front of a screen. When colored shapes appeared, his task was to pull a lever. When he did, he received a drop of blackberry juice, which Julio loved. At first, Julio barely noticed the screen, but when he happened to pull the lever at the right time, earning that delicious blackberry juice reward, his brain activity spiked, showing a strong pleasure response. As Julio began to understand the connection between seeing the shapes on the screen, pulling the lever, and getting the juice, not only did he focus on the screen, but Schultz observed a spike in Julio's brain activity similar to when he received the reward. This anticipation of the reward is the neurological basis of craving and explains why habits are so powerful. Schultz then changed the experiment. Now, when Julio pressed the lever, either no juice came out or it was diluted. Schultz saw neurological patterns related to desire and frustration in Julio's brain. Julio became noticeably unhappy when he did not get his reward, just like you might be upset if you don't get your beloved daily cookie. The good news is that craving also works for developing good habits. In 2002, New Mexico State University showed that people who consistently exercise actually crave something from the activity of exercise, like an endorphin rush, or a sense of accomplishment, or sometimes a post-workout treat. This craving to perform the activity solidifies the habit. Cues and rewards alone are not enough. Considering the power of habits, it is no wonder that companies strive to understand and create cravings in consumers. Claude Hopkins, who popularized Pepsodent toothpaste when many other brands of toothpaste had failed, was a pioneer of this approach. He added a reward that created a craving for brushing your teeth. that cool, tingling sensation we now expect from toothpaste. This originally did not exist in toothpaste. It actually has nothing to do with cleaning your teeth. But this sensation not only proved the product worked in the consumer's minds, but also became a tangible reward that the individuals started to crave. To change a habit, replace the routine with another and believe in the transformation. As anyone trying to quit smoking can confirm, when the craving for nicotine strikes, it is tough to resist. That is why the key to breaking any habit is do not fight the craving, redirect it. In other words, maintain the same cues and rewards, but change the routine that follows the craving. Multiple studies on ex-smokers have revealed that identifying the cues and rewards associated with their smoking habit and replacing the routine with one offering a similar reward, such as doing push-ups, chewing Nicorette gum, or simply relaxing for a few minutes, significantly improves the chances of remaining smoke-free. One organization that effectively uses this method is Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, which has potentially helped up to 10 million alcoholics achieve sobriety. AA encourages participants to list what they crave from drinking. Usually, factors like relaxation and companionship matter more than the actual intoxication. AA then offers new routines to address those cravings, such as attending meetings and talking to sponsors for companionship. The goal is to replace drinking with something much less harmful. However, research on AA members reveals that while this method generally works well, it is not sufficient on its own. In the early 2000s, researchers at California's Alcohol Research Group observed a pattern in their interviews with AA members. A common response was that the habit replacement method was effective, but when a stressful event occurred, the old habit was too powerful to resist. Regardless of how long the person had been in that program, they could not overcome that stressful event and potentially relapsing. For instance, one recovering alcoholic had been sober for several years when his mother called to say she had cancer. After hanging up, he left work and went straight to the bar, and in his own words was pretty much drunk for the next 2 years. Additional research suggests that those who avoid relapse and maintain sobriety often rely on belief. This is why spirituality and God play a significant role in AA philosophy. But it is not necessarily the religious aspect itself that helps people stay sober. Believing in God also helps participants believe in their ability to change, which strengthens them when facing stressful life events. Change can be achieved by focusing on key habits and celebrating small victories. When former government bureaucrat Paul ONeill became the CEO of the struggling aluminum company Alcoa in 1987, investors were doubtful. Their concerns grew when ONeill announced at an investor meeting in a posh Manhattan hotel that he would prioritize, above all else, work-life workplace safety. More than profits, more than revenues. Safety was his number one priority. One investor immediately called his clients and said, "The board put a crazy hippie in charge. He's going to kill the company." ONeill attempted to explain his reasoning to the skeptical investors. He argued that talking about safety would not be enough to reduce injury rates at Alcoa. While most CEOs claim to care about workplace safety, empty words would not lead to the development of a company-wide habit needed for real safety change. ONeill understood that habits exist within organizations, and changing an organization's direction requires changing its habits. He also knew that not all habits are equal. Some habits, called key habits, are more important than others because adhering to them creates positive effects that spread into other areas. By putting worker safety first, managers and employees would need to consider how to make the manufacturing process safer and how to effectively communicate safety suggestions. The end result would be a highly efficient and profitable production organization. Despite the investors' initial doubts, ONeill's approach was a huge success. By the time he retired in 2000, Alcoa's annual net income had increased 5-fold. Key habits can help individuals change as well. For example, research shows that doctors struggle to get obese people to make broad lifestyle changes. However, when patients focus on developing one key habit, such as keeping a detailed food journal, other positive habits begin to emerge. Key habits work by providing small wins, early successes that are relatively easy to achieve. Developing a key habit helps you believe that improvement is possible in other aspects of life too, which can trigger a wave of positive change. Willpower is the most crucial key habit. In the 1960s, Stanford researchers conducted a famous study involving a group of 4-year-old children. Each child was brought individually into a room with a table and a yummy marshmallow on it. A researcher gave the child a choice: eat the marshmallow now, or wait a few minutes and you get 2 marshmallows. The researcher then left the room for 15 minutes. Only about 30% of the children managed to not eat that yummy marshmallow while the researcher was away. The interesting part is that many years later, when the researchers found the study's participants as now grown adults, those who showed the most willpower by waiting the full 15 minutes had better school grades, were more popular, and were less likely to have drug addiction problems. Willpower appeared to be a key habit that could be applied to other aspects of life as well. Similar findings were reported in a more recent study. For example, a 2005 study on 8th graders showed that students with high levels of willpower had better grades on average and were more likely to be admitted to selective high-tier schools. However, willpower can be inconsistent, as you may have noticed when trying to, say, start exercising more often. Some days, going to the gym is easy. You just do it. It's not a big deal. But other days, Just getting off that couch seems like a whole workout. Why is that? It turns out that willpower is like a muscle. It can get tired. If you use your willpower on something like a boring spreadsheet at work, you have reduced the amount of willpower that you have left for that day. You don't have any willpower left when you get home. But the analogy goes further. By engaging in habits that require determination, such as sticking to a strict diet, you can actually strengthen your willpower. Think of it like a willpower workout. Other factors can also impact your willpower. For instance, Starbucks found that their employees usually had the willpower to smile and be cheerful, regardless of how they felt. But when things became stressful, like when a customer started yelling, employees would lose their composure. Research led the company's executives to conclude that if baristas, the people who make coffee, mentally prepared for difficult situations and had a plan to handle them, they could maintain their willpower even under pressure. To assist them, Starbucks developed the appropriately named latte method, which outlines steps to take in a stressful situation. Listen to the customer, acknowledge their complaint, take action, thank the customer, and explain why the issue occurred. By practicing the latte method repeatedly, Starbucks baristas learned exactly what to do in a stressful situation and were able to remain calm. Other studies have shown that a lack of autonomy also negatively affects willpower. If people do something because they are ordered to rather than by choice, their willpower muscle will tire much faster. Organizational habits can be risky, but a crisis can lead to change. In November 1987, a commuter at King's Cross train station in London told a ticket collector that he had seen a burning piece of tissue near one of the building's escalators. Instead of looking into the issue or informing the fire safety department, the ticket collector did nothing. He went back to his workstation, assuming it was someone else's responsibility. This reaction was not too surprising. The responsibilities for managing the London Underground were divided into several distinct areas, leading staff to develop an organizational habit of sticking to their own departments. People did not like it when people from other departments bothered them. Over the years, a complex, hierarchical system of managers and sub-managers had evolved, each protective of their department and their authority over it. The nearly 20,000 employees of the London Underground knew not to overstep into each other's domains. Most organizations, unfortunately, operate just like this, with individuals vying for power and reward. To maintain peace, certain habits are developed, such as minding your own business. Shortly after the ticket collector returned to his duties, a massive fireball erupted into the ticket hall. No one knew how to use the sprinkler system or had the authority to even use fire extinguishers. After a series of train station employees failing to take action, rescuers eventually arrived and described passengers as having severe burns, their skin peeling off when touched. Ultimately, 31 people lost their lives. The core failure in this tragedy was the lack of a single employee or department at the London Underground with overall responsibility for passenger safety. However, even such disasters can have a silver lining. Crises create a unique opportunity to reform organizational habits by instilling a sense of urgency. This is why good leaders often intentionally prolong or even intensify a crisis. While investigating the King's Cross Station fire, Special Investigator Desmond Fennell discovered that many potential life-saving changes had been proposed years earlier, but none had actually been implemented. When Fennell faced resistance to his suggestions, he turned the entire investigation into a media spectacle, a crisis that enabled him to enact the necessary changes. Today, every station has a manager primarily responsible for passenger safety. Companies use habits to boost their marketing efforts. Imagine walking into your local supermarket. What is the first thing you see? Most likely, it is fresh fruits and vegetables, beautifully arranged. Logically, these delicate items should actually be the last thing you see. They should be just near the checkout in order to avoid damage from other products in the shopping cart. But counterintuitively, marketers discovered that if we start shopping with fresh, healthy items, we are actually more likely to buy unhealthy products like snacks and cookies as we continue shopping. This may seem interesting. Consumers do a good deed at the beginning with some nice fruits and vegetables, and then they let go of their inhibitions and reward themselves with lots of junk food. Retailers have developed even more subtle ways to influence customer habits. For example, most people naturally turn right when entering a store. So retailers place the most profitable products to the right of the entrance. Despite their sophistication, these methods are one-size-fits-all and do not consider individual customer behaviors. However, advances in technology and data collection now allow for highly precise customer targeting. American retailer Target, which serves millions of shoppers and collects massive amounts of data, is a master of this technique. In the early 2000s, Target decided to focus on a profitable customer segment, new parents, but they wanted to go further, targeting expecting parents before their babies were actually born. To do this, they analyzed the purchasing habits of pregnant women. Target's analysis was so successful that they ended up marketing baby-related coupons to a pregnant teenager whose family was unaware of her pregnancy. Her father angrily confronted the local Target manager, but when the truth came out, he had to apologize. Target soon realized people do not like feeling spied on. They cleverly hid baby coupons among random, unrelated offers to make them seem like familiar, untargeted promotions. When introducing something new, companies strive to make it feel familiar. Radio DJs, for example, can make a new song popular by playing it between two existing hits. New habits or products are more easily accepted if they do not appear new. While Target faced criticism for its invasive marketing approach, it was undeniably successful. Largely due to targeting pregnant women, the company's revenues grew from $44 billion in 2002 to $65 billion in 2009. Movements grow from strong connections, peer pressure, and new habits. In 1955, a black woman named Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her bus seat for a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. She was arrested and charged, becoming a civil rights icon. But her case was not actually the first of its kind. So why did her arrest lead to a bus boycott that lasted over a year? First, Rosa Parks was well liked and had many friends from diverse backgrounds in her community. She was a member of various clubs and organizations and had connections with people from all walks of life, such as professors and laborers. She served as the secretary of the local NAACP chapter, participated in a youth organization at a nearby Lutheran church, and provided dressmaking services for poor families while also altering gowns for wealthy white people. Her husband even joked that she attended potlucks more often than she ate at home. In sociology, Parks had what are called strong ties, direct relationships with many people across many different social groups. These connections not only helped get her out of jail, but also helped spread the news of her arrest all throughout Montgomery, sparking the bus boycott. However, her friends alone could not have sustained a lengthy boycott. That's where peer pressure comes in. Social circles also include weak ties, or acquaintances rather than close friends. Peer pressure is mainly exerted through these weak ties. When a person's broader network supports a movement, it becomes harder to opt out. As the boycott went on, the black community resorted to carpooling. However, commitment began to fade when city officials introduced new carpooling restrictions, making life without buses even more challenging. That is when the final component emerged, a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., advocating nonviolence and urging participants to forgive their oppressors. Inspired by this message, people started forming new habits, like organizing church meetings and peaceful protests independently. These actions turned the movement into a self-sustaining force. We are responsible for changing our harmful habits. In 2008, Brian Thomas tragically strangled his wife to death. Distressed, he turned himself in and faced murder charges. His defense? He experienced something called a sleep terror. Research shows that during sleep terrors, unlike sleepwalking, the brain mostly shuts down, leaving only the most basic neurological regions active. Thomas believed he was attacking a burglar harming his wife. His defense argued that this perception triggered an automatic unconscious response, an attempt to protect her. In other words, he acted out of habit. Around the same time, Angie Bachman was sued by Harrah's Casino for $500,000 in gambling debts. After losing her home and a $1 million inheritance, she was still $500,000 behind. In court, Bachman argued she too was just following a habit. Gambling felt good, and she could not resist Hera's tempting offers of free trips to the casino, even though they knew she was a compulsive gambler who had declared bankruptcy. Ultimately, Thomas, the individual who strangled his wife during sleep, was acquitted, receiving sympathy from many, including the judge. Bachman, the gambler, however, lost her case and faced public disdain. Both Thomas and Bachman could argue, "It wasn't me, it was just my habits." So why was only one acquitted? The answer is simple. Once we are aware that a habit is harmful, it is our responsibility to address and change it. Thomas did not know he would hurt someone in his sleep. He did not have any reasonable suspicion to believe he was capable of that. Bachman, on the other hand, she knew she had a gambling problem, and she could have avoided Hera's offerings by simply joining a voluntary exclusion program that would have stopped all gambling companies from marketing to her. She did not do this, and that's why she was responsible. This concludes The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.